Hello and welcome to this video from Churn Lane. Today we're going to take a look at the layout overview now that the layout is completed. So at the design phase of Churn Lane there were a few things that were really important to me. It wasn't to take up too much space at home. I wanted to build something that was of exhibition standard, and as a consequence it needed to be easily transportable just by myself and be able to fit into the car. So there was no multiple baseboards, which creates a lot of issues with circuitry and trying to join things in alignment. So I came up with the layout initially just as a 6 foot by 1 foot board, and this is what we see here. So this is the main board, 6 foot by 1 foot. I quite liked the idea of a theatrical design where you're looking into the layout, so it has like a stage presence to it which engages the viewer. This was the primary model, and as a result of this what we had was then setting the scenes. So how did we give the layout purpose? Well, over the years I've toyed around with ideas and I've always came back to it, and it was a design concept by Alan Wright back in 1979 I believe, which was called the Inglenook Sidings, and that basically consisted of a 3-siding formation with 3 cars in 2 sidings and a 5 car in another siding. At the front of that was the head shunt. The purpose of that setup was that out of the 9 wagons on the board you could only select 5, and you're only allowed to shunt so many wagons at one point, and the head shunt and the sidings were configured in such a way that that was all it was actually possible to do. And there's been various concepts of this over the years, loads of interesting designs, so it's well worth taking a look at that if that sort of thing takes your interest. For me though, I wanted to take it one step further. The layout for me needed to have a purpose, so yes, I could easily fit 3 sidings and a head shunt in maybe around about 4.5 foot, but I wanted to give the layout some purpose, and to do that I set the branch line. So I had a little look at some of the milk services that were ongoing through the 70s and came up with the idea of running the creamery. The purpose of the creamery, we have inbound products, so the milk tankers are coming in full and other products coming in to support, and we have the outbound products going on the outbound train. So now we have a purpose for the layout. But then it was, how can I give the layout more atmosphere? So what we have in terms of buildings, we give the activity going on in the background here. You can see the workers are working away. We have all the milk churns, so we've identified the purpose. Yes, we've got the signboards as well. We have the warehousing, the pallets, so that gives a sense of activity on the layout. Then it was more to do with the place setting. So what I then took on was to model the main line but not do it in full. If I'd wanted to model the full main line, then I would need another 2 sidings here plus a platform. Now I'm looking at 2 foot wide, but because it's through trains and through freight trains as well, I would now need a runoff at the far side. So now I'm looking at another 4 foot that end as well as another 4 foot at the other end. So the layout grows extensively. Goes against what I was originally setting out to achieve. So I thought, how best can I now create that scene so that someone can engage and relate to it? So the best way to do this, having had a look on many train journeys, was to model the line side. So here we have the occupational crossing for the cows to reach the cattle pen for loading and unloading. We have the line side hut, the hedgerows, the ballast from the track bed, the meter cabinet, so on and so forth. We've got the platform here, people waiting for the platform. Okay. The clock, the signal, which we have as an operating signal, the signal box right beside the line side, and that gives the layout a sense of purpose. The exit was an idea for the future that it would always be extendable, So I recommend that to anyone. Whenever you're modelling, always think that it may extend at some point. It's easier to build it in at this point. For that, there was a cutaway at the back of this board underneath the bridge, which allowed no modifications because the hole already existed for the train to pass through. And that just means you don't have to worry about any cutting boards and wrecking anything at a later date. The purpose of the bridge is actually that the bridge imagines coming further over. So this is the central pillar, and then we have another tunnel at the side here and another overbridge. So this is all the imagination setting. Providing depth, we have the back scene. So here we have the ID back scenes, and this gives the layout a further setting of perspective. So that's always quite interesting from a field point of view. Slightly faded down in terms of the tones, giving it that more detailed view of distance as well. And you can see all the houses and everything in the background there to provide that detail of depth. And that makes it quite nice. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the sounds, and then we'll talk about some of the rest of the layout as well. So how do we get sounds onto the layout? Well, quite simply, you could buy some of the more expensive ones that come with preloaded sounds. However, I opted for one of these MP3 playback modules. You can buy these on Amazon, relatively cheap. Simply add an SD card, add your own sound effects, code them, use the dip switches, and then you just output that to a speaker. So here's the speaker, for example. Again, you can buy this on Amazon, just solder up the connectors. And in this case, this one's just on a continuous loop setting. So I have one soundtrack on there, which is about 10 minutes long, and that just plays on a full loop. And this one actually simulates the main line for me. I have another two boards. I'll just show you those as well. So at the other end of the board, we have another two soundboards. Again, exactly the same setup. These ones low work on a trigger, so these have an input, so you can see all the cables going out. These actually feed onto the back of the switches on the back of the instrument panel here. And when we flick the switch, it's a momentary switch, that sends a signal and that plays the track. Really quite simple. So 3 boards, 3 SD cards, a couple of hours making up various sound effects, and all in all the layout sounds come in at around about £30. Well worth it, nice little project to work on in case that takes your fancy. So let's now have a look at other things on the layout. So here we have the instrument panel. This is the bank of switches here, so on the back of this we just saw the soundboard, so we have 4 triggers here on one board, another 4 on the next board, and that gives us a total of 8 sounds that we can actually play. So as an example here, we have the break-in. I don't have DCC on this layout, it's all analog, so I have the break-in sound. Incidentally, I've also got a secondary trigger for this, which is actually on the controller, and that enables me, if I'm stood up, to be able to flick the switch and get the break-in in time with the locomotive as well. We have a sound here for the horn, and we've got a sound here for the cattle truck, so that when the cattle truck is actually in dock, we get the sound of the door opening, the sound of the cows actually coming off of that, and that just gives another sense of realism. We have a sound here for the gate latch, and that coincides with the gate, which also operates on the servo to open up the siding gate. So that's just nice little detailing, something to play around with, gives something else on the layout to watch. We also have a siren. So that's the klaxon there to tell the workers that we've got a train coming into the sidings. We have a signal lever prompt, that's really for working with the siding signal and the mainline signal, just so that we can time that and use the signal buttons here. So I've got mainline signal here and siding signal. Other ones then that we have on the board we have a loco coming in, which we can play, and then we will time that. It fades in, and then it comes into the siding. You have the brake squeal coming in off the axles as well. And this four here are just purely to do with loco sounds. I've got another one here, which is departure. Okay, so that's those two. And then we have 4 points on the board, so we have our 4 points with the Mimic controller, just so I can see where everything's set to anyway. Okay, so I've just enabled the background sound. So this one actually loops. You can hear the sound of a train departing. You've got the levers coming from the signal box as well. You can hear the bells between the signal boxes sending the codes. And the idea being that because we're just to give an extra little bit of movement and modelling this main line, when you hear the signals go, the signal levers go, you can actually change the signal alongside as well, and that just gives a little bit more realism on the main line without actually having to model it. So the background loop, that includes all of the main line operations, but it also includes the sounds of the cows, the sounds of the birds, as well as sounds coming from the warehouse, because we have this open activity here. So it's nice to be able to get some sounds from that as well. So as this is a shunting puzzle, the last train out forms the train that's now going to come back in. I'll create another video which shows you what that looks like. Once you've handled that inbound train, what we do is we use all of these wheels on the front. This is another project that you can find on the channel, and what I did and the purpose behind this is just to show us what stage each wagon's at if I need to load it, and it's based on the selections really. So it's just a way of remembering, so that you don't have to try and remember what stage you've got each wagon at. You can just simply look at it as a visual dynamic. Overall, shunting puzzle then. The inbound train will come in, you will unload the wagons or move them to a siding if they're already empty. Once that's complete, the loco will return to this position. The driver will report to the dispatch clerk, find out what wagons are to be selected for loading the outbound train. You'll pick 5 wagon cards out of the 9 available, completely at random, form the outbound train. The cattle wagon always has to go at the loco end. The 5 wagons will be loaded into this siding here, and then we notify the signal box that we're ready to leave, set the levers, open the gate, away the train goes, and then the whole process basically restarts. Overall, it can take anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes to handle an inbound train and 15 to 20 minutes to handle an outbound train. Multiple combinations are possible, so there's always the operational interest here as well, and it keeps people engaged. You can see I've made it look as real as possible. Weathering powders have been used. We've highlighted individual details. We've got things like the seagulls and the rabbits and so on and so forth, just to bring that fully through to a point of completion. The outbound train is formed. It simply exits the scene and comes into this small extension, which is 3 foot, only by a couple of inches or so. Okay, so here we have the run out, just long enough to accommodate the wagons, and this basically here is just a small release with a magnet where I can uncouple and change over the locomotive. This layout uses 3 Class 25 locomotives, 1 in BR green, 1 in BR blue, and then 1 under the tops livery of BR blue also. So to bring light into the layout, what we have the lid, which simply opens, which allows me to work on the track. We have a lighting strip running the length of the board. That's facing inwards, so we're facing into the box, creating the light. Also comes with one of these, so I can change the colours. I can move to a nighttime setting, I can maybe have a dawn setting, and change the colours to whatever I fancy. So it's great for modelling different times of day as well. We have the sign, completely homemade, just letters that you can buy online. This is actually cut out of MDF and sprayed with red carb paint. We have an information board for anyone at exhibition, just so that we can see. So I also don't have to remember where everything was bought. It's all listed for everyone, should they take a fancy and wish to go and purchase themselves. Some information as well, so you've got my handle for my channel here, information about the rules of how it operates, so on and so forth. And because so many people are shy about asking questions, I always welcome questions, and hopefully can answer some of these. And completing with a black apron. This is fully collapsible, the legs detach and it all goes onto a sack barrow for moving around, so it's really quite convenient. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I hope it inspires some of you just into what can be achieved in a relatively small space. Overall, this project has probably taken me best part of 9-10 months to complete. Had a great time building it. It's the first layout actually that I've ever finished, so quite proud of that as well, and I'm sure I'll get some peace in regards to this. Great layout to operate. It's always good to come out and have a wee shot of the trains. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I will be posting videos on how to do the inbound train and the outbound train, and hopefully I'll see some of you at exhibition.